rules of peace and war are only applicable if there is a leadership that is constituted according to the rules of the traditional Sharia. And that hasn't really existed since the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. There's various strange hybridized models. So you have Colonel Gaddafi with his weird vision of some sort of Leninist Islam. I don't know how you categorize it. Certainly post-classical. You have the Saudi monarchical model, where the city of Mecca now looks like Las Vegas, but without the gambling, and somehow they think that's how a holy city has to be, and the lifestyle of the princes. You have the Iranian Republican gangster, semi-educated elite with the Republican guards beating up people in the streets and probably fiddling with elections. That doesn't really look like a sincere religious movement that's interested in serving the people. Where does it exist? There are some cases where religiously motivated political activists have assumed positions of political power, generally under the radar of most observers in the West, where there have been forces for relative good. And you could look at Indonesia, for instance, the world's most populous Muslim country, where the West supported to the hilt Sukarno and Suharto, and then Suharto was replaced by basically a religious groundswell of opposition. And it was led by the Nahdlatul Ulama, which has 40 million members, headed by Abdurrahman Wahid, who's a Cairo-educated traditional religious scholar, who replaced the Western-dominated totalitarian system with a democratic system which was not perfect, but far better in terms of freedom, human rights, economic development, openness. They withdrew from East Timor. They've cut some kind of civilized deal in Aceh. So that would be an example of somebody who's a passionate religious leader. He died, of course, just a few weeks ago. Somebody who's an absolutely authentic, traditionally trained Muslim scholar, but doesn't figure on the West's radar as a religious leader because he's not shouting and throwing bombs. But he's infinitely more influential than most of these clowns that you see now in the Middle East. Turkey might be another example, despite the difficulty of doing anything in the sort of militant, secular, constitutional framework in Turkey. Erdogan's government, which is religiously driven, all of those politicians have wives with little headscarves, and they're sincere practicing Muslims. They have brought something far better to Turkey than the sort of ostensively secular regimes that Turkey has had since the 1920s. So there are plenty of stupid and dreadful things happening politically in the Islamic world, but there are some very interesting and impressive things happening as well that generally don't get enough credit, I think, in the Western press. There's some interesting books. They have them in the UL, actually. Douglas Ramage has a book on religious political movements in Indonesia and the role of Abdurrahman Wahid in creating an Islamically authentic, as he understood it, democratic alternative to Suharto's